It is time to freaking rock. So, hey, first of all, thank you for jumping on with us, and for everyone who's listening. Kai and I met, and now Steve, you're meeting her virtually through the computer screen.
Marty lets me meet people virtually usually.
Yeah,
I don't get to go to any of the cool stuff.
He's got to earn the. He's got to earn the trips.
Does he just keep you locked up in the house there, huh?
Locked up in the house. He gives me the, hey, Steve, we got a web thing today. I go, oh, thanks a lot, Mart. I appreciate it. I'll see you at next year's Winter Strong.
I'll come home and tell you all the stories, Steve. So, no, well, thank you, Kai, for jumping on with us, and this will be super fun. So we met this past weekend and had an awesome conversation over the campfire, which I'm sure we can funnel into some stuff here and what you're doing in life. But for people who are listening to this, before we get into the deep questions, can you give, I don't even know if this is possible to set you up for this, but can you give a breakdown of what exactly you're doing or do for in life, I guess? Does that sound well enough? I've never talked to someone who's dominated Naked and Afraid, so I don't know how this startup goes.
Well, I mean, I guess my journey towards being on Naked Afraid started when I was about 19, and I had a car accident, and I ended up with a broken bone in my back. And like, I wasn't really a fitness person. I was always sort of in the outdoors, but having to be indoors for like, I don't know, like 3 months flat on my back certainly made me never want to be indoors again. So I headed into the outdoors at about 19 and became a outdoor guide.
Oh, wow.
So rock climbing, kayaking, sailing, all those sort of things, and did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then a kid on a school camp was like, you should be a stunt woman. And I was like, what? That sounds amazing. So,
Yeah.
just up and went to Vancouver and basically wandered around sort of British Columbia going like, hey, I want to be a stunt performer. How do I do that?
Did it. That's great. Yeah, you know what? I should.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Well, so you originally started, if I have this correct, you grew up in Australia.
Yes.
Yeah, so you went there, you started in Australia, and then you came British Columbia, and now you're in this, you're trying to travel all over the world though now, right?
Yeah, then I've like, of course, been in the movie industry. Like, I did become a stunt performer, and I did quite well out of it, and I ended up going down to LA because that's what you do when you want to do bigger and better things. So I was in LA for a while, and then eventually New York for a year. But because I did the extreme survival stuff, and you're in Hollywood and it's all glitz and it's all glam, but it felt very, very superficial. So I took a pocket knife and I walked across the Sierra Nevadas for 100 miles just to see if I had what it would take to survive living off the land. And I sort of documented it a little bit. I went with another guy that liked survival stuff, and Discovery found that.
Yeah.
So, we did some news about it. It was a hard journey. It took me 10 days. And it was super extreme. It was way harder than I thought. But then Discovery saw that and reached out to me for the first season of Naked and Afraid. And the
You're
conversation.
season oneer.
I'm a season oneer.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
What year was that? What year was season one?
Like 6 years ago, whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So I would imagine it would be in that window. So I want to not forget about that point because we'll obviously dive into what you just said. But can you peel back the layers into that first 19 years on the planet? And did you ever imagine that you would have said what you just said when you were growing up?
No.
Yeah, that's what is so fascinating to me. Yeah. It's wild. But yeah, can you kind of peel into those first early years, like what life was like, what you're kind of finding interest in?
I often tell people, like, I was just unextraordinary. Like, I really was. I never won anything. Like, I was never, so when I say to people, like, I think we still need winners and losers, everyone says to me, that's probably because you won all the time. And I'm like, my first trophy I ever won was like when I was 40.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't win. I tried hard.
Yeah.
I loved the outdoors. I grew up in the outback of South Australia, so I was always like out on my own, like racing around and sticking sticks down holes and, you know, trying to avoid snakes. And
Right.
I was always very stubborn. I think that's probably the main streak that you could probably look at that I carried through my life. You know, mum and dad would always say that the worst thing they could tell me was no, because I'd just be like, I'll show you. Like,
Yeah. Well, I always
like
wonder
basically-
that. I always wonder that because you meet a lot of people like yourself and have conversations like we're having or have had, and it's always like I wonder, is that innate in people? Like, do you think that just was part? Like, do you think everyone has their own destiny? Like that starts at an early age, and you have this wild, extraordinary side, and then the mission of life is to follow that intuition. Because from when I first started talking to you, I mean, it's very easy to tell you're very intuitive, right? And actually, you directly said that to me, I believe, about training intuitive.
Eating.
Was that what
Eating intuitively.
Eating intuitive? Yeah, I remember. I remember you using that verbiage to a degree, but I've always thought of it as like, do you think that that's kind of what we're supposed to do? Like, do you think that that's kind of what you've just followed and you've found your success or fulfillment by not just eating intuitive, but maybe overarching everything you do intuitively? Is that sort of what excites you?
Well, I think it's a really interesting question, because I always feel like when you're on the wrong path and you're not following your intuition, the universe like slaps you back like out of that rut and into another direction, you know. So
Yeah.
I was doing a Bachelor of Business Management, majoring in tourism, and I was like, yeah, you know, I'll just go and work in an office in a hotel in maybe a, you know, major resort chain or something. That was what I was thinking. And that was when I had my car accident and broke my back. You know, and I guess there's been two very significant moments in my life with that stuff. And that was that. And I would never be the person I am today if I hadn't gone through that.
Right.
And the other one was like my hamstring, basically. I tore it completely off. And I was doing stunts and I was 42, and I had told myself I wanted to quit stunts at 40 because it's really hard on the body.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be one of those women I see with the vertebra fused. Like, we have tiny necks. So doing stunts, you're constantly getting concussions, you're constantly getting whiplash, and a lot of women have like really bad back and neck issues. And I was still doing it at 42 and doing it to almost the highest level that you can do stunts at. And then my hamstring tore completely off, you know, and I feel like both those moments in my life with the universe going, all right, you're not listening to me.
Yeah.
This is not the direction you're going in anymore. So, yeah, I mean, that definitely was a huge thing at 19 for me to kick me into a more intuitive path. And I do wander through the world, like someone will ask me to do something and I put it into my body almost. Like, I just sit with like what would it look like if I said yes? And what would it look like if I said no? And my stomach feels different in one of those answers. And then I just go like, that's the way, you know?
Well, that's how you had to do it, right? Because I want to go back to the first part of your story about becoming a stunt person. I mean, that is like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll go do that. So I think a lot of people that listen to our podcast are looking for someone to give them a push to find their stunt, right? To find their thing. So one, how did you go about getting into that community? And then two, I got to hear about the first stunt you did, because you had to be super inexperienced and you were just sitting there going, you want me to do what? I got to hear about that.
You want me to do what?
Yeah. Fall down the stairs? No. Okay, maybe not for me.
Funny you should say it. Wasn't Stairful. See that intuitive right there.
Well, I watched a super long thing about Home Alone and how those stunts happened, and now I'm like super interested in it.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest thing for me was to not listen to the people that told me that I shouldn't do it.
Yep.
You know, and I know that's getting into philosophy quite quickly, but the amount, like, you know, I do talks, and the main thing I say is like, what do you do with the no's? And there was nobody that said to me, do you know what would be a really good idea? You know, give up your job and head to Vancouver and try and try and become a stunt performer. That'd be a great idea.
Yeah.
And everyone I spoke to as I was in Vancouver, I was in Squamish. I was living in a van, actually, in a little climbing community just outside of Vancouver, but not many people know of Squamish. But so I was climbing every day, and I was chopping wood for money, and I just kept saying to people, like, this is what I want to do. And like very few people went, that's going to happen for you.
Right.
Like I was 25. So the first thing people were like, well, if you want to become a stunt performer, you have to be training from a very young age. And I was like, And then they were like, which is the irony of me doing some of the biggest stunts at 42. And then they would say to me, like, well, what's your transferable skills? And I'm like, well, I can climb and I can rappel very well. And they were like, yeah, not transferable. Like, you either have to be a fighter or a gymnast. That's sort of the two ways that you can get in. Or your family does it, or someone who does it. Your partner does it.
Yeah.
And then I was big. Like, I was muscly because I was full-time climber. So it just muscles on my muscles. And everyone's like, yeah, nobody's going to want you to double them. Like, you just don't look the part. So everywhere I turned, people would be like, no. And so I just had to keep being like, well, this is my dream.
Yeah.
And then finally, like, we were at the pub and some guy's like, hey, you serious about this? You're not just like playing around. I was like, yeah, I really am. He's like, that guy at the bar, he's a stunt rigger. And he'll, go and chat to him, buy him a beer. And literally that moment changed my life, Wow. So I'm a bit of an introvert. You might not know because I probably talked your ear off at the fire. But like for me to actually like go up to someone and be like, hey.
Yeah, that's tough. Right.
Beer helps.
And beer helps. And to his credit, he just said to me, look, are you serious about this? I was like, yeah. He's like, do you have a headshot? And I'm like, no. He's like, a resume? I'm like, He's like, video of you doing stuff? I'm like, no, I don't have that. And he made this list of things for me. And he's like, you need to do these things. And he said, and if you're really serious, he said, you're never going to be a professional gymnast at your age, but at your height, there's no fighters in Vancouver. And he gave me the phone number of a fight trainer. And I still have that bit of paper from 20 years ago. It's like old and awesome. But it's got that bloody phone number on it because I rang up the guy and he ran group sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays for $20. And so I knew if I chop wood for an hour, I'm going to have enough money to do this session. But like I turned up to his gym in Vancouver in my van that I lived in, and I didn't even have sneakers. Like I had hiking pants and light hiking boots, and everyone in there was like all like super fancy and dressed in their nice name brand training outfits. And I walked one step in the door and like I turned around and walked back out again.
Nope. No, thank you.
And he saw me and he's like, come in. And I was like, but, we became really good friends and he saw how serious I was and so started training me on the off days as well. So I trained every single day. Wow. So he did private sessions Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays, and then I did the group sessions Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I worked my butt off. Took 3 years.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, because, it takes about 3 to 5 to start earning money in the stunt industry.
So you had to believe in yourself that whole time too, without seeing any return.
Yeah, and again, it's full of people telling you why it won't happen. It's very competitive. I did background work to just get experience on set, and then finally, because you have to then get into a union and this and that, and finally, I got a phone call from a stunt coordinator. I'd been giving out my headshots, and he was like, the director has chosen you as the stunt performer for for a show called Dead Like Me. No, what was it? Pushing Daisies. Oh no, it was Dead Like Me. Yeah. And do you remember that one? Like, like these Grim Reapers live among us, and
I remember there was a lot of really good stunts in it. That's all I can remember from that.
Touche.
Yeah, I had to be a bride, and So going from never even looking at myself in the mirror to sitting for hours in hair and makeup and wearing this beautiful big white dress, and the first thing I did was get it dirty.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
Exactly. That is, I am so happy that you asked that question, Steve, because that story is insane. And I keep thinking to myself, I don't know if there's really an answer to this, but you know, to think about going through that you do a great job of painting that. I can visualize that moment in your life. And so I always think of it as, okay, so there's this guy, he points at that guy at the bar. Okay, I'm going to go talk to him. He's going to ask me these questions. I don't have anything, but he believes in me. And then I go to the fighter, chop the wood, I do the work, I get extra time. 3 years later, I get these opportunities. Do you guys think, I guess this is for both of us, or all of us, but Kai, do you think that people can feel that sort of belief on you? Like that's kind of a universal type question. I know this is like a fairy tale type question or hypothetical. I don't know if we have any answers to this, but do you think that those people could feel like, hey, this lady really is going to do this? Like, do you think they could feel that? And that people can feel that off of you and that sort of energy, and that's why they kind of hung with you or had that faith?
I do, yeah. I just got chills even just, with you asking that question. But I feel like because now I'm in a position where I mentor other stunt performers who want to get in the industry, and you can feel it.
Yeah.
Like, the ones that are like gonna give it everything they had and then give it some more. Yeah. And I think that that people then believe in you if you're most passionately believing in yourself.
Yeah.
And it's hard to believe in yourself every day. To me, so if you saw the town that I lived in as a kid, it was like it was a ghost town. Mm-hmm. Like, so one street, 200 people, like 40 kids in the whole school, outback Australia, so just flat as the eye can see, nothing for miles. And to go like from that and be like, yeah, you know what I'm going to be? Like, I'm going to be a Hollywood stunt performer. And then have it take 3 years of being told no. Like I had to have such a huge belief in me, but then I also had to have like this little support network around me that was just like, no, like we believe in you even on the days that you don't believe in yourself. But I do think that people can feel that belief, and if they are good people, then they will rise to help you rise.
Yeah. You sort of find that too, right? Like your energy aligns with, I go back to, we were talking this morning over coffee about the competition at the MindStrong and how like Duncan, Duncan and I became boys. I never knew him in my life. And so Steve and I played college baseball together in 2010 for 2.5 months.
Yeah, tops.
And 2.5 months, never met each other. We won a championship that summer, and we've been best friends for 10 years now. Like we have companies together, and we've been friends for a decade now. And it's like Duncan and I, or the other people, like you compete, and you just feel this like energy, this like alignment with people. And then like what you're saying is when you go through struggle, that's what we were talking about this morning. Is now like struggle is that connector, right? Because now we can feel that through the struggle, and I think that has a lot to do with like cold exposure or what you're doing when you're out naked and afraid, right? And you're doing these sort of things. And so you said something really powerful that, again, another question that I think you'll be able to take and run with. But you said a thing about trusting your gut. Right. And so like getting yourself into a position of asking yourself, will this be good or bad for me? And then whatever your stomach says, go that way. Right. As you've sort of improved and enhanced in your life, like how have you noticed that, I guess, quicker or more clearly? Has there been like through wisdom and more experiences, have you been able to line yourself more with like that internal gut decision making to be clear?
I think the more you pay attention to it, the faster you can understand that it's working. Mm-hmm. Like a very beginning way of doing it that I used to do was flip a coin, right? And so I'd be like, heads, I go that way, tails, I go that way. And I'd flip it and it'd be heads to say go that way. But then I'd go, I'm going to go this way, So it's like you don't actually have to trust the coin. But if it says heads and your gut sinks, then you're like, I'll go the other way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Simplify.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. But now I can just like go, like literally it's a microsecond, like even, it's something simple, but I was choosing a handle for a knife I made last night. I opened the drawer and immediately I'm like, it's this one, and then you see someone else trying to choose their knife handle and they're like, oh, this one might, what about this? And everyone like overthinks it. And then, but your first instinct is generally like, and it's beautiful. It's just what I wanted. But if you start to bring in like, what will people say?
Yeah.
And what will my parents think, and what will that person think? And then you start to overcomplicate the decision, because that's where it starts getting overcomplicated. It's like, well, when I'm using this knife, are people going to judge the color of the handle? It's like, that's when you stop listening to your intuition, when you start being more concerned about what other people around you think. Like the first Naked and Afraid was hilarious. It was like, I get the phone call from Discovery. I'm like on holiday with my family in Byron Bay. And they're like, hey, it's Discovery here. And I was like, oh, cool. And they're like, we've got this show idea we'd like to pass by you. Just stay with us. It's called Naked and Afraid. And I was like, no, thank you. Like, no.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Who did you say you were again?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And then they were like, but it's going to be pixelated, and it's the most extreme survival show that's coming on television, and this is what the setup. And I was like, yeah, it's just not for me. Like, I'm not a nudist, I'm not an exhibitionist, I've never mooned anyone in my life, or I just don't go streaking. So it was one of those things where I was like, right. And then I hung up. But they said, look, think about it, we'll call you back tomorrow. And I hung up and I went down, and as I was walking down the stairs, I knew I had to do it. And it was just this absolute feeling of certainty. So even by the time I was talking it over with my parents, I'm like, I think I need to do it.
Yeah.
And, and it turns out they put us in the most extreme location that they've really ever put a couple. And that was first season. They've done over 120 episodes now, and people still refer to my episode as the most extreme ever. So like, we're sitting out there in the swamp with no dry land, knee deep in water, and all I just kept thinking was, there's a reason for this. Like it's awful, but it needs to be this awful. So I'm just going to sit with it, and it'll be done eventually. And then, it turns out that, as a result, I guess I'm classified as one of the all-stars, even though I haven't done as many episodes as most people, just because it was so extreme. So, like those sort of, and then I sold my book off the back of doing that show. And, like there's a lot of like ripple effects from doing it in the end. And yeah.
Are you allowed to like talk about the show? Like some of the details of the show?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so to give you a background of why I'm excited, I usually ask the what I call the blue collar questions on the show. And when this show first came out, my buddy Joe Erb, we talked about this for months, was going to go into a backyard. He was going to wear boxers, right? Because we're in residential area. Yep. And we were going to give him a tent. And we were going to see if he could last out there for 2 days, because he confidently thought he could do it. And I was like, what do you mean? You can't hunt. You can't do anything. So this was like a year-long topic in my group of friends. So I'm really curious, when you show up to the show, how does it work? Like exactly, like you get there and you're like, hi, I'm the person you called about Naked and Afraid. Like, where are we going? What are we doing? How do they lead you into that? Like, how big of a surprise is it? Like on the show, it feels like it's a huge surprise when you get there. What is that like? Like, what are the producers like to get you moving?
So I don't know if they do it now, but for the first season, they did chemistry reads. So everybody got flown to Los Angeles, and we're all in a hotel. We didn't really get to meet, but they would pair us with a guy, and it would be like you would do a series of like team building exercises and chat and interact. And I guess, to see who they thought you would probably have the most conflict with.
Yeah, seriously, right? Sure. Like who? Yeah.
And then like, so you get the phone call, you do these interviews, you do this chemistry read thing, and then you're just sort of given a rough date. And so they'll say, like, okay, in 6 weeks' time, we'll give you a plane ticket to somewhere. And then about a week before, you get told where you're going. And
that is wild.
Yeah, so I got told Florida initially. So I was going to the Everglades. And then 2 days before, they changed the location to Louisiana. And they were like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Like, we now have a 10 to 15 degree difference in temperature, like immediately we go from what I see as like survivable naked to like right on the cusp of being too cold. And I was like a little bit annoyed because I'd seen all these ads coming out and people were like, I'm in Panama and I'm in Costa Rica and look at the Maldives.
Yeah. You're heading to the bayou.
I'm cooking out, like, yeah, I've got all these coconuts. So many coconuts, I don't know what to do with them.
I'm too hydrated.
Yeah. So all of that seemed really nice. And then I was like, fucking Louisiana. What?
I'd have been pissed.
Yeah, seriously.
I swear I would have been pissed. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Is it too late? And so, when you get there, they put you in a separate hotel from your partner. So you honestly don't know who your partner's going to be.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
And then you do like an insert interview the day before. So I don't think they do it now, but we would go out and like pull our top down to here and put the necklace on and pretend that we were out there. Before we go out. And then the day of, it's a lot of big sweeping shots. Like it takes a lot of time to shoot that first day, but you just sort of basically move into the insertion point, and it's always it never gets easy for me. That moment they're like, time to take your clothes off.
Yeah.
It always feels a little dirty.
Sure. That's the whole point of the show, right? It's supposed to just kind of shock you.
And I watch the show with a lot of people because people are always like, can we watch Louisiana with you?
Right.
And every time I see me pull my knickers down, I'm like, I hate it.
Yeah.
But of course, and then I'm in a freaking canoe. And if you've ever tried to get out of a canoe, there's no way to do it without legs.
No way. Yeah. And so when you walked out, you recognized the other person, right? You had some sort of chemistry, negative or positive, with your partner already from the readings, or no?
I don't think I actually even read with Billy.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
So you were just like hey.
Well, that's weird in itself. That's weird in itself. Like
that had to be a wild moment.
Like I can't even imagine.
Hey, we're doing this together.
I did an all nude spa in the Netherlands, and it was a dark sauna, and I still was I was so silent walking out each time. I can't imagine being out in the in the swamps
with a camera on you.
So that's
so,
wild.
like the guy that's paddling my canoe, right?
Yeah.
He's this old Creole guy, like you can sort of see, and he's like paddling the canoe. And just before I had to take my clothes off, he's just like, "Ma'am, I have to tell you, your hair sure is pretty."
Oh no! Show over. No. Naked and very afraid. Very afraid. Naked and very afraid.
I'm very afraid. Yeah, no, I get it, right? That is wild. How do you prepare for? Okay, so I didn't know that they didn't tell you a location.
I love the inner workings of it.
Yeah,
because it shows you how much harder it is, right?
Right, that is insane. I just assumed that you knew and you trained for that specific environment or whatever. But that's probably the test of it, right? That's because you're trying to understand if you can survive pretty much anywhere, right? Is that sort of the goal?
Yeah, I mean, and for Billy, that was sort of like, very similar to Atlanta, where he'd been in the outdoors. Whereas for me, I'd never seen anything like it. It's just completely opposite to Australia. I mean, for me, survival is about more a mentality than a knowing every single plant that I can eat, you know?
Yeah.
But there are some standards all over the world, but it's more like an attitude and a way of looking at the environment differently that you should be able to sort of implant anywhere.
Well, so, and I think that's a great tie-in to dive into that rabbit hole for a minute, because, you know, before you did this is when you did the Sierra Nevada, right? For 100 days, you said? So that had to have made you, was that and you said something, again, very profound to me. I shared with a group of high school kids yesterday. I was talking about how I was so excited to have this podcast. So I was like, this is what she said. Kai, she does this. It's crazy. But you said to me the other day about how, like, you've tried to see what your limits are, and you've realized that you've been able to get through those limits and reach new limits. And now, I don't necessarily know if I need, or Steve and I, you know, got to go do a hike in 100 days at the Sierra, but we can find ways from your story to funnel into ours or share with other people. And that's what we're doing right now. Right. But so when you think about your mindset, what is it that gives you that drive to want to see what your limits are, starting in that Sierra, then maybe going into the swamps, and obviously you do other things as well. But what is it that when you get like a fear, how do you sort of sit with that and then push through it? Because you've got to have the most heightened fear states in these environments, I can imagine.
For me, I never want a fear to limit me from doing anything in life. Like, so if I was ever scared of anything, I would do it till it didn't scare me anymore, because I just want to move through the world making choices consciously for me, not as a result of where fear is sending me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does tremendously.
So then it feels like I have way more choices, and I'm being, you know, that I can then pick up on. So I have this talk with my dad quite often, because I'm like, I just don't get scared anymore, Dad. You know, like my adrenals are just shot from stunts, you know.
Right.
But constant repetition in stunts has given me this really solid thing where I don't get scared of stuff that I can't control. So if I'm going to die today, I don't know that. So why am I going to be scared of the possibility of it? And I've just really practiced that so often that, like, even if I hear something at night, I don't get scared. I'm just like, I'm either going to die or I'm not going to die. And I know that sounds really morbid, or it's going to hurt me or it's not going to hurt me, but I can't control it. I can't control whether it hurts me or not. It just is. So there's no point in being scared of the things I cannot change or cannot control. And I am pretty good with that. But this episode where I was alone in the Amazon made me realize how intrinsically part of me that is. Because is this going to air after the 23rd of February?
Well, it can if you're about to give us great information.
Yeah, you can.
You know, I mean, it's our show. Simple as that.
Yeah, I don't even know what day it is, to be honest with you.
It's
all right,
February 14th or something like that.
Oh, so it's 10 days. Yeah, the 4th. Yeah, so 10 days from now, I think. Yeah. We could, we'll air whatever you want us to.
Yeah, give us the good stuff. We'll air it later.
Let's get into the depths.
Well, like, because, like, I walked into the Amazon and I was not scared ever. And I'm like alone for 16 hours a day, and I had a fairly inexperienced camera crew with me. So the 8 hours that I had my field producer with me, she had never even lit a fire in her life. She had never been in the jungle. So she was so out of her depth that I was kind of almost looking out for her as well as me. But when they left, like we have the safety net of we have a walkie with us, and that's meant to go to a security base camp. My security base camp was about 20 minutes walk through the jungle, or like 20 minutes pace through the jungle. So if anything went wrong and I had to like call, help was at least 20 minutes away. And
wow,
then for
that's
them
wild.
to come, yeah.
I thought they would be right there.
No. And they're like terrified. So I've got this security detail they've got guns, and they won't sleep alone. There had to be 5 of them at a time because they were so scared of being in that base camp by themselves, even with guns and lights and fires. And then most of the time, no one at the camp spoke English.
Yeah,
so I don't speak Spanish. Yeah. So I'd be like, snake bite. And they'd be like, what? Snake bite. What? So I knew that them trying to get a helicopter, like I was dead. Like if anything happened serious, I'm dead. And I didn't care. Like it just didn't faze me. And I'm like, I don't know how it's going to come out on the show, but I'm literally out there cruising around by myself, 16 hours, nighttime. I'm lying in there. I've got a tiny fire. It's jungle dark. So if you put your hand in front of your face, you cannot see it. It's that dark. And, there's like noises and there's, like storms, like I had massive storms and trees falling down around me. And I don't think they're going to be able to show it because I'm just like, this is great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm like, who gets to do this?
This is insane.
I'm like naked, and there's monsooning, and there's lightning strikes, and there's trees falling down. And I'm checking in with myself, and I'm like, nope, still not scared. Like, so I really think it's so ingrained in me, this like, I can't change it, so I'm not going to worry about it. That's a long answer to your story, sorry.
I thought of like 7 questions while you were going, so I'm trying to piece them together right now.
I don't even know where I'm at right now.
How about this? Let me start with an easy one, maybe not profound, but so as a Minnesotan, I would be terrified to be put in the Amazon, but if someone told me to go to Louisiana, I'd be like, I think I can do that. And are you telling me you enjoyed the Amazon more than Louisiana?
The Amazon was more of a profound experience for me. Have you seen my episode with Louisiana where, so I'm with Billy, and Billy was quite sad and very negative. And that was, so I'm propping myself up in this crazy world, but then I'm also working for Billy too.
Yeah.
And I would say, apart from going like, okay, I can see how long I can go without sleep for, or I can see how long I can not eat for, I didn't learn anything about myself in Louisiana.
Yeah.
I'm so good at compartmentalizing. Like a lot of people talk about the psychological damage of going out on these shows and, then having to come back to society. But I'm literally like, I'm naked, that goes in this box, and this is the extreme experience. And then I come out of that and I'm like, and now I'm not. Like it's just this, I'm really good at compartmentalizing and not being damaged or worried so much about these experiences. But the Amazon changed me so profoundly that I would say that it was my favorite of any of the experiences.
Wow.
That is awesome.
Awesome. It is awesome.
I had something fall in my bathroom last night, and I didn't sleep for about 35 minutes. Like, just out of the blue. I was in bed. So, like, I could have used this yesterday.
I had something fall in my bathroom.
Seriously.
No, that is hilarious. Well, that's an interesting point, too, that you just made, because so you do come out of the Amazon, or you do come out of anything, any stunt, any Hollywood stunt, any the Nevada, the swamps, and then you do go back to normal life. Like right now, you're just sitting in a comfy home, right? And it's like, what is that like? Do you ever find yourself chasing extreme after extreme after extreme, like, does that become exhaustive? Like, do you get tired trying, like, I don't know. I can't even put myself in that perspective, but I've got to imagine coming back into that. I'm thinking about the movie Castaway. You guys seen Castaway?
Oh, yeah.
You know, in Castaway, have you seen that movie? And after he gets back and he's just kind of picking up the crab leg and he's putting it back down on the table because it's
too easy.
It's too easy. And so I'm trying to think, like, what is that? Does it almost make normal life frustrating after so many extreme experiences?
I wouldn't say that I have a normal life.
Right.
So,
well, you were saying you can compartmentalize pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like whatever I'm doing right now, I'll be there. You're very good at being present.
And that's it, 100%. You know, like if I'm sitting at home with my niece and making a fire with, like, you know, the ferro rods, or if I just am where I am, and that's just the way it is, you know, and I enjoy every aspect of life for whatever it gives. You know, I'm just as happy, you know, going out and hunting goats with my bow as I am having a dinner party with friends. You know, I think, Steve, you just said it perfectly. You know, I just do embrace whatever the moment is and appreciate it all. I would say that being outside and having adventures outside is what makes me most alive. And I've always got something planned. I just have to. So I think that's what makes the finishing of one adventure fine for me, because I'm like, well, I did that and now I've got this coming up.
Yeah.
But I think that if that was my adventure for the year, then I might feel a bit sad about it. Yeah.
For sure. Well, I think even thinking about, so what we always ask, we created what we call the Diamond Series years ago, and it's something it's always fascinating to ask. I'm very excited to take her through it to essentially get some of your thoughts, Kai. But we always ask ourselves about our purpose, our standards, our systems, and our vision, right? And then we just kind of call it like a baseball diamond. You're just kind of going around the diamond. And so to go off of what you're saying right now, it just makes me think, like, what a good opportunity to think about you personally and what your purpose is, what your why is. And we've always sort of centered that into, you know, how you identify with yourself, how you serve other people. Like you're talking about, like taking care of the producer, taking care of, you know, your first partner out. And like you have to do all these things. Like I watched you do that to numerous people over the last weekend. I've put people in care and look at and just have a fun time, which a lot of people, everyone did that for the most part, but I watched and felt that from you instantly. But so your service to other people, how you identify with yourself. And then obviously, you know, our favorite one is like, what are you willing to struggle for? Right. And you find a lot of purpose out of struggle in a positive way, but taking all that and centering that into where you're at now, how do you kind of align yourself with when you wake up in the morning? What is Kai's purpose? Like, what is how has that evolved into the moment through all your experiences to keep moving through this sort of positive struggle, if you will?
Well, I mean, firstly, I think my sort of mantra, you know, that whole eat, pray, love, or whatever that is, like mine is adventure, love, and happiness, you know, so I look at everything in my day, does it fit into those things? And adventure is something I've never done before, or something that pushes me, or something that's exciting to me. Like, so it can be as simple as, you know, giving a talk to somebody I've never given a talk to, or, you know, like I've been having some really cool meetings lately. So it doesn't have to be I'm going to climb Everest. Right. And adventure is just something I've never done before. And then love is like self-love, friendship love, like family love, like it's all the love. And then happiness, obviously, that's just really simple. It doesn't really make me happy. So that sort of everything for me is now broken down and aligned in those three words. And then I have what I call my universal debt. So I can never repay, you know, Kirk Jakes, the fighting instructor, for the 3 years of free training that he gave me. Never repay him. But I leave my universal debt open to anyone else. So it's yours. You know, like if you want something from me and I can make that happen, I will do it. You know, so that's the, like a charity in Nepal wanted me to come and lead a trek with some kids, and they're not going to pay me, but I'm like, yeah, that's universal debt. Anyone that contacts me on Instagram and asks me for help, if it's up my alley and I can help, I will. I'll spend time giving out advice. Like I do a lot of work with disadvantaged youth, and I charge a lot for my talks to corporate people, so I can do all the rest of that for free. Yeah. That's my sort of giving back. And then I just want to live an extraordinary life in my definition of it, So I remember when I was a kid, I read a book, and I think it was like a Terry Pratchett book, which is really kooky. And it was like, may you live in interesting times. And it's actually a Chinese curse, because they think that interesting times are tumultuous times. So they are like, I curse you, may you live in interesting times. And I'm like, that sounds great. Yeah. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. It's just like, I don't know. And then through all of that is just this solid belief that the universe will provide. If I keep giving back, if I keep helping out where I can, if I keep being grateful for everything that comes my way, then the right things will continue to happen, and I'll meet the right people and be in the right place at the right time. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Oh, did that?
I sure as hell hope so, Mart. Otherwise, it wasn't a good question.
I mean,
that's a heck of an answer.
Yeah, that was extraordinary.
And if it didn't, it was a better answer than the question.
It was. Go sit there. I mean, come on, Harv. I got to work on my question asking if you're going to stay up there at that level. So no, that's nailed it. Put it that way.
Where are you at with confidently taking time to teach two 31-year-old males how to make a fire?
We'll do it for 2 days at our boxers out back.
Yep. We got a lake out here. There's some stuff going on.
We'll do it for 2 days.
I'm definitely come see that.
Yeah, you got to come on up. I mean, we'll do it in the -30 with the heater out there. But no, well, so take that into, take that amazing answer. Which is incredible. I can't even dive deeper into it for the sense of nailed it. Mm-hmm. And so when you think of that, like the values, right, and the choices, you've talked a lot about choices in this podcast alone, of how you make a choice and all the things. But intuitively, I think we think a lot of that does come off of like the values that you created, and you've touched a lot on things that you remember from your childhood, or where you're from, or giving back to these people who helped you in early on, and all these sort of things says a lot about you and how you align with your value system. And so when you wake up and you kind of think about your standards, whether that's mental, physical, or emotional, what is the day that you look at, like today, you're improving today? How do you have do you have a standard in place that you want to just try to objectively get that done each day? Like, I want to share my love with these specific people. I want to read this, or I want to try this, or train like this, or eat like this. I know you talked a lot about how conscious you are about eating. I mean, a lot of that is highly moment present awareness. Is there do you think that you've just kind of established a threshold to that, or do you try to make sure you're tracking that?
I don't sort of consciously track it, but my philosophy is I try and be better today than I was yesterday. Mm-hmm. And whether that is picking up one little gem of knowledge that I'll carry with me, or whether that's training, or whether that's eating a certain way so I'm feeling better, that's just my mantra. Like, what can I do today that will leave me better than I was yesterday? I try and, I bow hunt, so I try and shoot my bow every single day. So even that alone has made me better than I was yesterday in whatever way, shape, or form. Right. I try and start the day with a cold plunge in any way, shape, or form. And so, it's kind of pretty simple. You sort of go, well, just those 5 minutes made me better today than I would have been otherwise. Mm-hmm. So, just little successes like that. And then there's the big goals, and they're sort of always floating in the background. So I'm a big fan of lists. Yeah. I love crossing stuff off my list. I love writing it in an actual book rather than on my phone. And I do try and have something on it every day that just makes me better today. So that's probably a big part of it. And I was thinking what you're saying before too. Like, I mean, my goals are very physical and in this like crazy realm that a lot of people be like, wow, I don't really think I'd like to do that. But the cool thing is, like, any of this philosophy, I call it like survival for real life, stuff. It's like any of this stuff, it can be applied to whether you want to become the manager of your business, or like any of these survival mentalities and attitudes can take you anywhere, no matter what the size or shape or what your goal looks like. And it doesn't have to be as stupid as mine, but
Right. Well, that's
certainly not stupid.
Yeah, no, not at all. And that's the point, right? Is you try to find your own niche, you find your own intuition, you find what sparks you. It's like we talk a lot about passion, and I think we're very fortunate to talk to a lot of young kids across the state of Minnesota, and we've been able to travel and speak as well, like you have, and it's been a lot of fun to communicate with people. But something I've just pondered over this for a long time, but it's we think that passion finds us. I don't know if I necessarily agree with, like, you can just go out and find your passion. I think you got to experience life and figure that out. Like, you've got to go out and have experiences and go, look, like, that created curiosity to me. So I'm going to go down that lane and try to improve at it. And I'm going to try to learn as much as I can of that. And then whatever I create any sort of personal wisdom from, hopefully I can share that with the world. And that's my service back. And I'm still thinking over a lot of that. I know him and I talk about that a lot, but so often we sit back and think that passion will come and just enter, it'll just be part of it. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think you have to experience life and you have to experience things and go try things, and then you'll be able to navigate through it. And so do you have to go be a stunt woman and go and do all this stuff? No.
Snake bite.
But snake bite. Yeah. But no, you don't have to necessarily do that. But I mean, you can take the bits and pieces that you're taking and then look at your life and dissect what in my gut makes me want to do that thing, and then just do it, and believe in yourself. And it sounds so simple. Obviously, we could talk about that for a whole nother podcast. I'm sure the three of us could, but the big bull, that's his nickname back here, the bull. So we'll take the bull, take her through your favorite one and the vision side of it.
Yeah, but I mean, vision is always my favorite one, and you've spoken so much on your life that I feel like I have a pretty good idea with it, and I would hope everybody would. But it's the question of what's next. What are you moving towards? What is, when you were talking earlier about how you have these little wins every day, but then there's that thing floating in the background. We want to hear about those floating things. Here's what I'm working towards. Here's what I'm going to end up doing. What are some of those things that get you to jump into the bath, that get you to jump in the tub, to get you to get the knife out, to get you to do all of these things? What are they?
So about 7 years ago, I woke up and I realized that there were no strong female role models on reality TV for women and for girls, especially young girls. My niece was like, I want to be Paris Hilton's BFF. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, we are just creating this world where Kim Kardashian is normal, and that's the goal. And so I realized I had to be on TV in the reality space as the host of my own show. And I've been working, and if stunt performing was an impossible dream, this is like the next freaking level, because you get like all these people here say they want to be a stunt performer and maybe 2 get in, and then you like times this by 1 million, and then one person gets in to be a TV host. So it's like, it's a huge goal and it's a huge dream. Yeah. And everyone keeps saying like, nobody wants a female in the survival space. But I've been working super hard towards that, and I'm closer than ever in making that an acceptable thing. And that's part of my reason behind doing Alone. And then I did Ed Stafford's show, First Man Out, like 2 months after I did Alone. So that's going to come out soon as well. Wow. And I was the only female to race Ed out this season of the location. So and I've got, I'm flying to the UK to meet with some production companies, and I met with a bunch here. And, I mean, I've sold shows with me as the host before, but then my hamstring fell off, so I didn't get to do that. But that's my goal and dream, is to show women and girls that you can be so strong without being aggressive and without being masculine. You can be super feminine and assured within the power that you have that comes along with being a female. And I'm not going to do it by telling you. I just want to show you how it can be done. So that's what I work towards every day, is trying to be the best possible version of me, to make one of these no's that I keep getting turn into a yes.
Wow.
Well, it sounds like me and Mark got a show to look forward to.
Yeah. No, Kys, you are a special, special human. I am very, very thankful that Steve was able to. It was important for me to have Steve, so I appreciate you letting Steve and I get to chat with you. And as I said, Steve's one of my best friends, so to have him get to meet you as well and feel what you've been inspiring me through for the last couple of days. And I know we'll chop up a conversation after this. But from my perspective, it's so powerful to have people's time, right? And to give us that time today, and the time you gave me, and Brian, obviously the other guys with MindStrong over the last couple of days, is I don't know how to thank you. Just thank you for doing that for us. But I hope that we can sort of help push that mission forward and push what you're doing out into the world. I mean, the last hour of conversation was incredible. I mean, listening to you just sort of speak so articulating, like, such profound thinking, and then like the way that you live it and do it, and practice it is so cool to have an opportunity to talk to you. So I mean, from my end, and I know you can say your part, from my end, thank you for giving us this time, and what you just did for us was amazing. And I can't wait for the people who are listening, that they'll get to experience this and listen to you speak. That's a very powerful thing. So I'm very thankful that we were able to connect this rather quickly and execute on it, because this was tremendous for myself personally to listen to you speak.
Oh, I just love it when, because I just float through life a little bit. And so I love it when people like you ask the questions that make me actually think about the whys.
Yeah.
Because, if you don't think about it, sometimes it just happens so unconsciously and subconsciously. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Stevie?
Yeah, well, it would be clear if I was down there, you would have been my guide, my Sherpa. I went on a high ropes course in Ohio and cried and hugged the guy who helped me through it. So I feel like you would have been that person for me down there. So thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. To me.
And stay on. I'm gonna get a quick video of you afterwards saying what you're doing and all the stuff you're doing moving forward. So awesome.
Well,
all right.
Kys, can you give just a brief rundown of how people can find you, some of the things that you're doing, if any way anyone can help or anything like that? Can you just give us a breakdown?
I mean, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook under Kys Furneaux, which is KYFURNEAUX. Very simple first name, very complicated last name. You can find me there, and you know what? If anyone needs a cheerleader, if anyone needs support, more so, what can I do for anyone else out there? It's I'm around. I'm always contactable through those channels, and even if you have any questions, just please hit me up.
Absolutely. Well, there you guys have it. Enjoy it and follow her journey, because Kys is crushing it. So, Kys, thanks again, and cheers.
Cheers.
You're welcome.